We think death is predictable, old age, disease, accident, but history doesn't play by our rules. Sometimes it arrives laughing. Sometimes it waits inside a machine we built to keep ourselves safe. The truth is that the most terrifying deaths aren't those you see coming. They're the ones that make no sense at all. A city drowned in molasses. Its streets so sweet people suffocated. A man fried, alive by a chair designed to deliver justice. An inventor jumping from the Eiffel Tower, wearing his own creation and his belief as a parachute. King at war not with armies but with his own body, undone by hunger and ice. And a modern pioneer, riding his machine of the future straight off the edge of progress. Every story you're about to hear is true. Every victim was alive a heartbeat ago, seeing the same light, breathing the same air as you, because death never needs a reason to choose its moment. All it needs is a mistake, an idea, a drop of curiosity, and a little time. Let's open the book of history's strangest goodbyes and see how fragile even genius can be. The Molasses Flood, 1919 Boston. The sweet disaster. Imagine death not by fire or water, but by sweetness. In January 1919, Boston woke to the sound of tearing metal and the smell of sugar. A giant molasses storage tank, 5 stories tall, burst apart without warning. 2 million gallons of thick boiling syrup poured into the streets at 50 kilometers an hour. The wave was 3 meters high, moving like dark lava through alleys. It shattered buildings, crushed trolleys, and suffocated everything in its path. People trying to run felt their feet sink, each step slower until the sweetness trapped them to die standing. 21 people and countless horses drowned in a river of molasses so thick it took weeks to clean. When the city finally scrubbed its streets, the harbor ran brown and sticky for months. A century later, residents swear the streets still smell like sugar every January. Proof that even sweetness becomes fatal when humans store too much of it in one place. Florida, 1990. Behind the walls of a state prison, the surface of a steel chair was still cold. For inmate Jesse Tafero, this morning carried the last light he would ever see. On paper, the execution was simple, legal, swift, painless, but no death is ever as sterile as law pretends it to be. Tafero had been convicted for the murder of a police officer 15 years earlier. The case was murky, the evidence contested, but fate had already chosen its path. That morning, Florida's legendary electric chair, nicknamed Old Sparky, stood ready. Officers followed protocol. Straps on the legs and wrists, copper electrodes, a wet sponge to conduct the current. Yet the right kind of sponge was gone. A synthetic one was used instead. Small choice, catastrophic result. At 7:13 a.m., the switch was thrown. A surge rushed through Tafero's body, and suddenly flames erupted from his head. Witnesses stared frozen in horror. Some prayed, others just watched smoke fill the room. Guards shut off the power. Silence. Then they tried again, a second burst of fire, and again a third. For 7 minutes, justice burned. The next day's headlines read, "Justice in Flames." Across the nation, people asked what kind of civilization expels a human soul like this. Florida officials called it a technical malfunction. The world called it barbaric. Within years, the electric chair was replaced by lethal injection, a cleaner method on the surface, but born of the same impulse to end life efficiently. Tafero's death proved a simple truth. We invented justice to look civilized, but we never learned how to make it humane. In that room, not only one man died. For a moment, so did the nation's conscience. The cannonball inventor, Franz Reichelt, 1912, Paris. 4 seconds of belief, Paris, 1912. A cold winter morning. The base of the Eiffel Tower was swarmed with journalists and police, waiting for a miracle that never came. At the center stood Franz Reichelt, tailor, dreamer, and would-be aviator, dressed in a strange billowing parachute suit of his own design. For months, he'd boasted in newspapers that his portable parachute would allow men to fly safely from great heights. He'd tested it on dummies before, but today, he insisted on testing himself. Policemen warned him to use a model. He refused. "Watch," he said to the crowd. "I believe in this." He climbed 620 feet to the observation deck. Wind howled through the iron girders. Below, cameras rolled. He hesitated only for a breath and stepped off the platform. 4 seconds. In that time, hope and gravity swapped places. The parachute snagged, collapsed against his body, and Reichelt fell like a stone to the frozen ground. His imprint was later measured, not much wider than his own dream. The film of his fall still plays in museums and on the internet, a loop of pure human arrogance and aspiration. Reichelt didn't die trying to defy death. He died trying to defy doubt. The Frozen King, Sigurd the Fat, 1066. The man who ate himself, year 1066. The North Sea was as cold as iron, and King Sigurd was as heavy as his crown. They called him Sigurd the Fat. He laughed at it for years, until the joke became the truth that would kill him. Convinced that his gluttony was both sin and weakness, he boarded a ship to the north, swearing to fast until his body obeyed his will. Days turned to weeks, no food, only melted ice and prayers. When the hunger finally broke him, Sigurd devoured a bucket of raw fish pulled from frozen waters. Within days, he was writhing in pain. Parasites tore through his intestines. Witnesses found him wading into the sea naked, trying to cool the fire in his stomach with ice. The shock stopped his heart. They buried him wrapped in seal skin. The same ice that had promised to cleanse him became his shroud. Sigurd's story is older than King's, the war between a man and his own body. He tried to starve his sins and ended up feeding death instead. In the end, his body froze, but his hunger won. The Segway CEO accident, 2010 UK. Falling with innovation. Segway CEO dies while riding a Segway. It was the kind of headline that felt like a punchline, until you read the details. Jimmy Heselden was no rookie executive. He was a former miner who became a millionaire inventor and philanthropist, creating better machines for workers like the one he used to be. In 2010, he was testing a new all-terrain prototype of the Segway on his estate in Yorkshire. A man walking a dog came from the opposite direction. To make room, Heselden reversed toward the edge, and the edge gave way. The machine's gyro tilted slightly backward to correct itself, but the ground was gone. In a blink, progress and gravity collided, and both went over the cliff. Heselden fell 40 feet into the river below. He died testing a device meant to carry people safely. Friends described him as humble, curious, and fearless. He once said, "Technology should make life safer." His death was a reminder that innovation always runs a few steps ahead of the edge we can see. Sometimes the future arrives before we're ready to stand on it. Death has 1,000 faces, but the most haunting ones look a lot like us. A wave of sugar, a malfunctioning machine, a dreamer with wings made of fabric, a king at war with his own flesh, a man and his invention tumbling together into the dark. Behind every bizarre death is a human hand, curious, ambitious, sometimes careless. These are not just stories about how people died, but why they lived the way they did, chasing control, meaning, and immortality. In the end, death doesn't need a villain or an excuse. It waits quietly for one small mistake, one spark of hubris. And maybe that's what makes life so fragile and so magnificent. Fade to black. Death never needed a reason, only an opportunity.